Hi, I'm Nan Simonsen, and the moment I hit live, the gardener came out to the front door, and my office faces the street and started blowing. He'll be gone in a second doing what he does, but that's what the noise is in the background. Hi, I am so glad to be with you. I came back, several days ago from Rancho La Puerta. Chef AJ, whom I listen to a lot, who is a vegan chef and, more importantly, a podcaster who has a daily, very important person, someone she thinks we should know about in the plant based world, speak. And if you go to Chef AJ Live and look for her channel and subscribe, it would make a ton of sense because I have learned so much from her. Beginning with the pandemic, March 20th, 2020, she began interviewing people and she hasn't stopped. I think now she's at, what is she at? Is it 500 or 600 interviews? And they're great people. I was listening to two of them yesterday, another of them today, a woman who lost, what, 50, 60 pounds, just switching to whole food plant based, mainly SOS free, and that's salt, oil, sugar free. She adds a little bit of salt, but she stays away from the oil, as do I, so that sounds like mine. My story was never that I had a dramatic weight loss. She's able to show that on all of her now very popular YouTube channels. Let me tell you who she is. This was a good interview, and I'll see if I can find it for you. I'm listening actually to another one right now called Miracle at Montefiore. Rip Esselstyn is interviewing a physician who is a cardiologist at Montefiore, whole food plant based, and he converted his own practice to plant based after he saw that instead of just doing procedures and prescribing pills, he could actually make people better. And that's just not usually what cardiologists see. What they do is they prescribe and they fix things. They put in stents and maybe do triple bypass surgeries, but the person gets just as sick again unless they change their diet. And here is this leader in the field, and he has gone plant based because he knows it's the thing to do, and it's a good interview. So it's Rip Esselstyn, and he is interviewing Dr. Robert Ostfeld, and the name of his interview is Miracle at Montefiore, which is a hospital in the Bronx, and that's where this cardiologist decided to make the biggest difference he possibly could in this community that is one of the sickest of the sickest of the 50 counties in New York. So I'm way off, but I was looking for, and the one I was listening to today with Chef AJ is How to Lose Weight and Fall in Love with Plant-Based Living. And that was the name of the interview that she did just a couple this right of, here is worth $1 million. Or that I watched just a couple of minutes ago. And it was with this beautiful plant-based now podcaster. Her name is Kate. And you can look at that. She lost 70 pounds in an 8-month period, simply going plant-based. So if that's something that you think would be interesting, check it out. How I Lost Weight and Fell in Love with Plant-Based. And the name of her social media connections is The Plant Provision. Like provisions, plant provision. She was very interesting, and she made a recipe for a soup that I'm going to try in my Instant Pot. She uses her Instant Pot all day, every day for different things. It was really interesting. So, what am I going to talk about today? I'll finish what I started. I got back a few days ago from Rancho La Puerta. Chef AJ has spoken about it a lot. She says it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet, and actually, It was voted the #1 health and wellness spa in the world by Travel and Leisure, and it was spectacular. What I want to point out, and this I found was interesting, I have been whole food plant-based now for 3 years. I don't think I've ever been healthier. I think I look better. I feel better. I came back from a 3-week holiday, 2 weeks with my husband up in Northern California, San Francisco, Santa Rosa, and then further up. And within days, I left again for Mexico on my own for this retreat. So 3 weeks away. There was a time, if I was gone 3 weeks, with new food and the temptations and all, mainly before plant-based times, but there was a time that I would always gain weight on a holiday. And not only did I not, but I was down a pound, which is inconsequential, but that is, it goes to show that on vacation, where you tend to be eating other people's food, but with restrictions, with requirements, as I call it, because we're very specific about what we won't eat and what we will. We will not eat any animal product, period. No cheese, no eggs, no dairy, no meat of any kind, no seafood of any kind. And we also avoid oil. So when we have a fajita platter, we say ask the chef to use either either no or very little oil. We're allergic to it, so it kind of scares them. And that helps, because what we want is whole plant foods, whole foods, plant-based, and oils are all refined. And the ones you get in restaurants are not only highly refined, but usually used again and again, and heated to levels that then even degrades if there's anything good about them, and they're certainly not necessary. The food has the food of that resource, like corn oil or safflower oil or olive oil, has far more nutrition in it than the oil. And the oil is 120 calories a tablespoon. I don't count calories, but I don't want tablespoons and tablespoons of oil in things that I cook, because think of how many things you cook, almost all of which, if you follow conventional recipes, will say, start with a tablespoon of oil, or 2 or 3. And at Rancho La Puerta, they are vegetarian. And so they served eggs. They are lacto, ovo, pescatarians. Lacto, that's milk and cheese. Ovo, that's eggs. Pescatarian, that's fish. And although I'll say, although people can thrive on that, if you look at the Adventist health study, which has gone on for 20 years and still ongoing, the longest lived people, the healthiest people, are the pure vegans and pure vegetarians, meaning pure vegetarian means only vegetarian, not the lacto, ovo, and pesco. And then the vegetarians, and then the pescatarians, and then the meat eaters. In other words, going downhill, the animal products are not foods that love us back. So we're loving things that don't love us back, and it's led to what we see in our society right now, a lot of really broken people physically. So we're here at this place that it would have been kind of easy to fall into a couple of I'll say conundrums, where we're looking at the food, I'm looking at the food, and I could think, well, oh, it's all right if I have that soup with a little cheese in it. But everything that they served, there was a little card that noted there were boxes, and the box would be checked if there was salt, sugar, oil, dairy. Well, cheese would be one of them, or meat of any, well, no meat, of course, but seafood of any kind. And so, or gluten, or soy, because some people are allergic to soy. I know Chef AJ is allergic to soy and actually all legumes. And so we would get our food or order our food because in the meals that they served for breakfast and lunch. There was a table. It used to be a serve yourself table. Now everything is plated and you can take it that way, or it will be handed to you through a glass because of COVID. And the dinner meals were shown on a menu. Well, oh, here's the other thing. When we got there, we showed our preferences or restrictions. Mine is gluten-free and vegan. And I got a number, and I would put that number out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner so that anyone serving us, anyone dealing with our food, could look at the number, look at the chart on the wall, that those numbers correspond to those restrictions. And there were plenty of people who had those restrictions, but the majority did not, or any restrictions. They would just eat whatever was served. And they would know what was on the steam table, for example, that we would not want to eat. So it would have been easy to fall into that conundrum of saying, well, it's not going to hurt just this one time because the entire dish looked so good, and it was beautifully made. They prepare the food beautifully. But when you make a decision, and this is my feeling, when a decision is made, and that decision is rock solid in our mind as to why, I have become a conscientious vegan. Now, I won't say, oh, I'm a vegan, because, again, I still haven't gone through the house and thrown away everything that's leather. But as it relates to dietary preferences, and as it relates to killing animals to eat them, I don't ascribe to that in any way, or the treatment of animals in the factory farms. I don't ascribe to that in any way. I think they're torture chambers. Sorry, but that's the way I feel they are. And I watched a news clip the other day of, this was New Zealand, and they stopped traffic on a freeway, and these people were heroes because they escorted the mother black swan with her baby off the freeway and made sure she got back into the woods. And I thought, in a heartbeat, though, those people and many others would have butchered her and eaten her if she were a goose. Or maybe not that goose, but a goose. So see, we love animals, but we separate in our brain, in our mind, in our thoughts, one treatment for another. I'll treat you beautifully because I can save you, but I'll eat you in a heartbeat because isn't that why you were raised? No. Well, maybe yes. Maybe it wouldn't even be alive otherwise, but man, what a life. Who cares? 8 billion. 8 billion a year is what we eat in this country. 8 billion slaughtered. So I'm done with that. So yeah, it would have been easy to fall into that, but not if the emotions are strong enough and the determination is strong enough. So when Dr. Osfeld was speaking with Rip Esselstyn just now, he didn't begin as a plant-based physician. He did research because he was getting frustrated about working with people who never got better. They were medicated, the numbers got better, but they didn't get well. And that's when he discovered whole food plant-based, after he read the China study from T. Colin Campbell, Dr. Esselstyn's work, Caldwell Esselstyn's work, Preventing and Treating Heart Disease, and on, all the books of which I have and helped me get started with this 3 years ago. And he became convinced. And so he was saying the same thing. There's not even a question in my mind about wanting these things when I know what it does for me to fill myself up on foods that will nourish as opposed to foods that will degrade my body. So my point here is, here we are at a spa, they're serving fabulous food, and yet we were still making decisions to not have one fabulously prepared thing, but to get whatever we wanted. And I'll say we because I went there because Chef AJ was doing a cooking class. I interviewed her in September for a lifestyle medical talk. She interviewed me in May for a cooking class and regarding my book. I don't think I've mentioned this, Aging Powerfully. And but we'd never met, and I thought, wouldn't that be fun to meet? Well, not only did we meet, but we ended up spending time together at a lot of our meals. She was there from Saturday to Wednesday, and she doesn't eat breakfast, but she would join her friend and assistant, Rebecca, and me for breakfast. We almost always met for breakfast, and then we'd meet for lunches and dinners. And so I got to know her well, and I got to see how she maneuvers in times like this. And there was simply no question at all. No, I'm not eating that. Would you give me? And that's exactly what happened with me. I would simply find ways to combine or have made for me based on my restrictions: no gluten, no, keep your oil to yourself. And there was no question about processed food there. They didn't have processed food there. I was very grateful that everything they cooked from their organic gardens. Think about it. Most things came from the organic garden. Not everything is available that way. And they were very conscientious in terms of food prep. And it was easy to go to a lunch counter and they'll give you whatever you want, as much as you want. Oh, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention, spa portions. The difference between eating whole food plant-based with little oil means that, except for the high fatty foods like avocado and seeds and nuts, and what else would be, and olives maybe, almost all of the foods that we eat with whole food plant-based, other than those fattier foods, the highest calorie they are a pound is 600, and that would be your grains and legumes. So fruits, vegetables, and grains and legumes, and potatoes, meaning all of the tubers, you can eat at 600 calories a pound, and most of us can eat up to 2,000 calories or more. You can eat pounds and pounds of the richest foods there are in that, I'll say, plant community, and yet we don't. We eat some of those foods. I'll eat a pound to a pound and a half, sometimes two, but seldom, of potatoes, sometimes at a meal. Think of how much that is and how satisfying that is. Chef AJ's favorite meal was her two big potatoes, either sweet potatoes or white potatoes, and a big pile of steamed vegetables, and maybe some roasted vegetables, but mainly the steamed vegetables. And that was a bunch of food. That food loved her body, and her body loved the food back. And it was as tasty, as filling, as satisfying as something that was being served to the person next to us that had, and let me back up, and with those two potatoes, maybe 300 calories, if they are, and again, we're not counting, but you're aware of, if maybe they were a pound and a half, maybe 450 calories, steamed veggies, hardly anything, big piece of fruit afterwards if you want. The fruit desserts, we had mixed berries and wonderful fruit desserts. And the person next to us, even at this healthy place, even though they served spa portions, and that was the other thing I wanted to mention, spa portions, and they say, we are going to serve spa portions, ask if you want more. The small spa portions are meant to emphasize that you're there to lean out, not chunk up. Well, the spa portions would have left me hungry. When, for example, well, I'll finish that sentence. So you looked at the person next to you, and they have sliced, beautifully arranged sliced vegetables, but there's some cheese. Not a lot though, they didn't overdo, but there's some cheese, and there's the richer foods, the nuts and the nut cream sauces, and that food could have been 2 or 3 times the amount of calories for a smaller quantity. I and most of us are very sensitive to our stretch receptors. The stretch receptors, if the food has nutritional value, are going to tell us when we're satisfied, but also when we're nourished, as opposed to like a tablespoon, well, let's say a half a cup of oil, 800 calories, 900 calories, 600, 700, whatever. First of all, it would nauseate you if you ever drank that, but it wouldn't make you full, because the stretch receptors would barely move, and yet it's calorically dense like crazy. That's a bad example, but that's the point I'm making. That person with that rich meal, beautifully made, would be hungrier well before I would be with my, I'll give you an example of what I did for lunches every day. They prepared these beautiful salad plates, and they weren't like this, like my salad plates. It was like a 7-inch plate, maybe 8-inch plate, and then beautifully arranged everything, some fruit, some starch, some maybe some nuts, and different kinds of greens, and maybe even purslane, things that they grew. I always said, would you, and they got to know me, take that plate, put another one right on top, in other words, double my salad, and then I would go over and get some beans, throw those on top. Then I'd go over and get some nuts, a few, throw that on top. Then I'd get maybe some salsas, because they had this wide arrangement of different kinds of pico de gallo and salsas fresh from their garden, made that morning, things like that. They had nutritional yeast out all the time, freshly ground cumin, green juices, ginger shots, things like that. And that was a beautiful meal, but that still wasn't all, because then I'd go and get a fruit plate, and then I'd go and get a, I don't know, maybe one of their green juices, even for lunch, even though I had one for breakfast. So what I'm saying is, there's a lot involved with a decision to go more plant-based. All of what you're eating being plants, which is what I do and what I've done for 3 years, what my husband does, Chef AJ, a friend Rebecca, a lot of people I know in this community are completely plant-based. But some people take it slowly, and if you listen to that interview I mentioned, she talks about that. She talks about how she transitioned. Here's a woman, 70 pounds heavier and than she is now, and how she just transitioned. Hi, Cynthia. Thank you for being here. And it's a good thing to hear from somebody who ultimately made a huge change in her life. She's a well-educated woman. Her degrees were in, was it social psychology? And yet she's working with people now to help them remodel their lives and get to the weight and the feeling they want about their bodies, because of her experience of losing 70 pounds, as she said, almost effortlessly, by changing her diet and changing the foods that she eats. And she titrated. She did it a little bit at a time. And she says the same thing. I don't even consider deviating, because I'm so clear on what that did for me. So I thought that's what I would use as my, I'll say short talk today. And that is just an impression. The last time I came on, I was actually at Rancho La Puerta. I spoke about my inspiration from having read about Ida Keeling, a 105-year-old who is still running, because I signed up for a 10K, and I'm looking now for inspiration and guidance from people whom you wouldn't expect this from. And boy, what could be more inspiring than knowing, because I'm going to tell you something. My husband told me when I told him I was going to do this, "Oh, Nan, you're a little too old for that. That's not age appropriate." Isn't that weird? And he's wrong. And maybe because I'm so ornery, I set out to prove it. Here's a book. Here's a book. Yeah, right, I'm too old. Anyway, so I was there and I spoke about them, and now I'm speaking about the impressions after all of this that reinforce my decisions and the things that I talk about to you all the time. I speak of lifestyle as medicine. I speak of balance in your life in the pillars that have been shown in lifestyle medicine to progress health and longevity, and they are getting enough sleep, de-stressing, movement, community, and nutrition, and of course staying away from addictive substances. But the nutrition is what fuels us every day. Now, if you ignore the rest, you can eat like a champion and still be a wreck because you wouldn't digest it if you're not getting enough sleep and always under stress. But today I'm just talking about the food, because the food at Rancho La Puerta is a big part of what people go there for. But that's not all, because other than dinner time, lunchtime, breakfast time, every day, all day, there were 3 to 4 every hour. There were 3 to 4 activities that we could take advantage of. They could be, and it was mind, body, and soul. We could be meditating. We could be in a sound bath. We could be doing yoga. We could be doing Pilates. We could do pickleball. We could do tennis. We could do mountain walking. On and on and on. And that's why this was a health resort, and it was so well put out there. But the food is a big part of what people really enjoy when they go to a place where they can just sit it out and let somebody take care of them in that way. And it was absolutely obvious that I think the most satisfying thing to do was to choose those foods that take very good care of us. We weren't sacrificing one bit, and came out of it healthier and probably glowing even more than when we went in. So I think that's all I have to say. I don't know that we have any questions. As usual, I can see one thing here, and that is that my friend Cynthia came on, but I can't see anything else. So I'll respond to any questions or any comments afterwards. Well, that's it. I appreciate your coming on just to see what's being looked at today and spoken of today. I'm so glad to be home. I just went up the mountain this morning and ran down just to trot, because I kind of tweaked my knee on one of the mountain walks at Rancho La Puerta, so I'm babying it a little bit, but I still jogged down the mountain today. So getting back into that. And I hope you can have a great day, because I know I'm going to. Take care. Share our message, share our mission, that as we get older, we can get healthier. And as we get older, we can look at the future in terms of almost, oh gosh, rediscovery and reinvention, even decades ahead of where I am at 70. I'm looking at the 80s and the 90s and maybe even into 100 with excitement. But you got to get there by taking good care of yourself in between, regardless of what your age. Have a great day. I'm going to. Bye-bye.